All right, welcome back. It's time for the hatch lesson. And if you remember in previous weeks, I said that I was going to hopefully have some sprite sheets ready so we can start making a really nice looking game. Unfortunately, I had some trouble exporting some of the images. They were just getting pixelated in some frames, not pixelated in others. So hopefully I can come back and have some better sprites for you. That said, I have provided at least a template to work with. So in previous weeks, we worked on this walking animation. And just to show you what it looks like, it's just Sonic walking around. Looks pretty good, but when we go to jump, it's a little bit off. Doesn't quite look right. So in the future, I hope to have some better sprite sheets for everyone to use. But for now, I will stick with this one. And if you do want to use this one, go ahead and check down in the description below. I provided a link. All you need to do is, if you're already signed into kidOYO class, which I'm assuming you are, go ahead and click that link. It'll open up, and then if we go to a new project, instead of the save button, you should see a green remix button right here. Now to catch up, I'm going to go ahead and go through the process of uploading this into a new file so I can work on it with you. And I'm doing this just because I want everyone to be reminded that they can do this themselves. So I'm going to click on File, Download to your computer. I'm just going to call this Sonic template. It downloads as a .sb3 file. Then I can go ahead and click Create, have a new file open, and now I can click File, Load from your computer, and if I click here, I can get that file loaded up into a brand new project. So at the start, as always, I want to save my work, expand the editor, and expand the stage. So I had said before that I want to make a platformer, and I still do want to do that. Once again, those animations hopefully coming in the future. But to get started, I'm just going to start adding some realistic gravity. In previous weeks, we did go over accelerated movements and realistic gravity. This is going to be a repeat, so because we've done it before, I'm going to go a little bit quicker through this. So in order to implement gravity, we need to create a variable. This variable is going to represent our y velocity. And the difference between velocity and speed, if you didn't know, velocity is how fast you're going in a specific direction. Speed is just how fast you're going in general. So we are going to create a y velocity variable. So under variables, I'm going to click make a variable. And this variable is just going to be called v, capital V, lowercase y. And I'm going to do this for this sprite only. Click OK. And now we can begin programming. So we're going to have to go back and edit some of this code because right now, if we look, we can walk all around, up, down, left, right. That's not really going to work for us. So we're going to take out up and down. But the first things first, I'm just going to add a simple ground item. And we're going to change this, but this is just to get everything working. So to add some ground, I'm just going to click on the stage here in the bottom right-hand corner. I'm going to click the Backdrops tab in the upper left-hand corner, and you can choose any color you want. I'm going to stick with green, and I think we're going to have enough time to improve this in the future. I'm just going to choose some kind of green color, use the rectangle tool, and I'm going to make sure that I have no outline. So at this point, I'm going to draw a long rectangle, something like that. Just give some ground, something to use as a basis for which Sonic needs to stand on in order to jump. So I'll click on Sonic, click back to code, and now we can begin implementing gravity. So for this, we want to grab a when green flag clicks black, and then we want to set the y velocity to 0. And I can do so by bringing in this block, and then I thought I made my variable before. I think I made a mistake. I was probably, yep, I was clicked into OYOBot when I created that variable. I'm going to get rid of that, click on Sonic, fix my mistake, and make that variable again. So for this sprite only, capital V, lowercase y, click OK, and now I have the Vy, or y velocity variable, for Sonic. So now I can click the drop down, select Vy, set it to 0, and I'm going to create one more variable, and this is going to come into play in just a minute. So variable, and this is going to be touching ground. Yeah, I don't like the question mark in there. And once again, for this sprite only. Click OK. And same thing, set that equal to, not quite 0, but we're going to set it to false. So from the dropdown, just touching ground, false, false. There we go. So it's a pretty good size. I'm going to leave that there. Can leave him here. And now we have our variables in. Now we need to start using them. So what we want to do is we want to make Vy become more and more negative as long as Sonic is not touching the ground, aka we want him to begin falling, and anytime you fall in real life, you fall faster. So Vy is going to constantly decrease, so get lower than 0. Once we hit the ground, we're going to make it 0, and we also need to make sure that each time, even though we are changing Vy, that doesn't necessarily mean Sonic is going to go down. We need to actually make Sonic move by whatever number we set Vy to. So let's go ahead and do that. So in the control category, I'm going to grab an if block. And now I am first going to program jumping so that we get that initial jump up, and then we can start working on that gravity to bring him back down. So in operators, I need an end block. And what we're going to do is say if we press the up key, and if Sonic is touching the ground, we want Sonic to jump or have an initial velocity of some positive number. So let's try this. Under sensing, I can grab the key up arrow, and I put it in the wrong spot already. Got to put it in the end block. And then we need to see if he's touching the ground. Now, this touching ground variable is how we're going to determine if Sonic is touching the ground. So I'm going to go to variables. I'm going to grab that block, that round hill looking block. And then in operators, I'm going to grab an equals block to see if touching ground, sorry, is true. Now I can snap that in here. And we can put this in the if block. And I'll move over a little bit. So if we press the up arrow key and Sonic is touching the ground, then we want to jump. So in this case, we are going to jump by setting our y velocity to some positive number. So I'm going to do 15. We're going to play with these numbers, see what looks good, but I'm going to use 15 to start. Now, once again, when you're falling, you progressively fall down faster and faster. When you jump, the second you leave the ground is actually the fastest you're going to go. From that point on, you're going to be slowing down until you stop midair and then come back down. So we do want to set Vy to some greater number, not change it. But when we fall down, we are changing it. That's where sometimes people get stuck with this. So next up, we have that initial upwards velocity. Now we need to start slowly subtracting it. So these two things in here kind of balance out to represent the relationship between gravity and jumping. However, we need to now implement this into Sonic's movement. So we're going to go to the motion blocks, grab the change y by 10 block, and instead of changing y by 10, we're going to go ahead and change y by vy, or our y velocity. So the way we're going to program this is, instead of just snapping this in one long piece of code, we're actually going to define a code block. In other programming languages, you can think of this as creating a function. So under my blocks, I'm going to create a new block. So up here, I click make a block. This block is just going to be called vertical. And I think this is going to be the better setting to have run without screen refresh. All right. So once you do that, you'll find, and it may be hard to find, it may be up in the left-hand corner, so you got to go looking for it, but you'll find this define block. So I'm going to snap that on top of here. So now that we have this defined, we want to actually apply it to the code we wrote. So this is going to be something that's constantly happening, so we need to go ahead and grab a forever loop. And once we have that forever loop, we can forever start dealing with our vertical movement. Now, this isn't quite going to work. There's a few things that we need to change, but first things first, since we're no longer controlling up and down, I'm going to go ahead and take out this if block, these two if blocks that deal with moving up and down. Additionally, I am going to put in a go to XY block, and I'm just going to throw them in the middle. 0, 0, and you already saw what happens. So when I click the green flag, it's actually working pretty well. Sonic falls down. However, he falls through the ground. Jumping doesn't seem to do anything other than cause that walking animation to occur. That's why you see him, kind of looks funny. That's why you see him kind of just bouncing up and down here. Also, Vy is constantly going down. We are falling faster and faster towards, I guess, the center of the Earth in this case. So we need to fix that, and we fix that by toggling this touching ground variable. And sometimes variables that have this true or false, these true or false values are referred to as flags. So let's go ahead and do that now. We're going to do that once again by creating a function. So we're going to, defining a new block, or in other languages, creating a function. So we're going to do that, but let's first add this block in. So we're going to set touching ground to false. Okay, so now that we have that, and we're going to come back to that in a second, we can go ahead and define what should happen when we touch the ground. So this is going to be touch ground. Run without screen refresh. Touch ground, edit. Click OK. I want to make sure that, okay, yeah, these are defined differently. Not that they can't be the same name, but I just want to clarify by making sure they're called something else, so it makes it a little easier to follow. So what should happen when we touch the ground? So the ground right here is represented by this green color, and when Sonic hits that color, he should stop, or his y velocity should change by 0, and when you do change y by 0, he's just not going to go anywhere. So first, we want to go to control and say if Sonic is touching that color, so in the sensing category, touching color, and then the ground's not purple, gotta click the eyedropper tool and select the color of the ground here. So if Sonic is touching the ground, set Y velocity to 0. Let's see, set Y velocity to 0. And now at this point, there's more we need to add, but I want to take the touch ground block we just defined and put it underneath the vertical definition we just made. And now if you look, something different happens. We're dropping Sonic down, and he slows down at least when he touches the grass, but he kind of keeps falling, which isn't quite right. There's some things we need to change. So although we don't really see it happening, these two blocks are playing in tandem with each other, I believe at least. So it sets Vy to -1, takes a tiny step down, and then it ends up getting reset before we ever get a chance to see it. We're going to fix that with this. So under control, I'm going to find the repeat until block. And what I'm going to do is I am going to raise Sonic up. Oh, and I'm going to stop my code because Hatch was getting glitchy for me right there. All right, so while Sonic is touching the ground, I want to raise him up until he is no longer touching the ground. Change Y by 1. And repeat until not touching color ground. So I can duplicate this sensing block here, just pull it in. And that works pretty well. However, I'm pressing the up arrow key, and Sonic's not going anywhere. Well, if we look, let's see where I press the up arrow key. When I press the up arrow key, he should jump, but he's only going to do that if he's also touching the ground, and we set it false here, and we don't set it true anywhere else. So we can go ahead, go to variables, find set my variable to touching ground is going to be true. And if you want to, you can use 1s and 0s, which are also true and false. But we're just being a little bit straightforward here. So now that we do that, Sonic jumps, and it looks pretty good. I can walk around, I can jump. The one caveat being, when I jump, Sonic's still walking. So let's go ahead and fix that as well. I scroll up here, I have this super long if block. And this happens, what happens here is that if we press any of these 4 direction keys, Sonic changes color, changes costumes, or walks. So to get rid of that, we're just going to pull this apart and have it so that it's just if the left or right arrow key are pressed that happens. So I can go like that, pull off the left or right arrow key, place that in here, and now Sonic jumps. There's no jumping animation, but if I go left and right, he's walking. Now the fun thing about animating Sonic is as he speeds up, his sprite sheets or his sprite animations actually change, and he goes from walking to jogging to running, sprinting, and you can also have him roll into a ball. So those things you can sync up with his speed as well, and that's when you can actually start implementing that accelerated movements in the left and right. To keep this within a respectable time frame, we're going to stick with just this easy movement of left and right using controlled movements, but otherwise we have gravity implemented pretty well. Now I want to get rid of these two. Now that we have that fixed, I want to get rid of these two variables here. It's easily done by just unchecking them here in the variable category. All right. Now that we have that, it's time to start building out a level as well as implementing what we've done in the past with enemies. So if we have some time left, I want to start actually making these textures look a little bit nicer. Sorry, the ground have a little bit of a texture in order to look nicer. But for now, we're going to stick with this, and let's just get some kind of platform going. So I'm going to click on stage in the bottom right-hand corner, click on backdrops, and I'm going to make this real easy. I'm just going to click on what I've drawn using the select tool, and then I'm going to copy and paste it. And then I can just make this narrower. Once again, copy, paste. So this looks all right. If we play the game, we can jump onto platforms. And you can see here, we run into some problems where Sonic, if he approaches the ground from the bottom, he can, well, let me deselect that block. He can kind of shoot through some of these platforms. And we don't quite want that. So what you can do is just design the level in such a way that these platforms may be thinner and that Sonic is maybe smaller. You can also play with the jump height and stuff like that. In the future, you can change your code so that Sonic has to be moving down in order to jump. One more thing I'm going to change is I'm going to lower Sonic in the code so that he doesn't start up there. So in Sonic, I'm going to go back to the code. I'm going to find my go to XY block, and I'm just going to make Y, drag this down. Let's see. -100, I think, is going to be good. And I'll make that even a little bit larger, -75. So we see Sonic drop down, we can jump. If you want, you can change his size, so set size to. I'll make this something like 80%. Oh, I had already done that in another block, I guess. Let me go around and see. I'm going to edit undo by doing Control Z. Hit the green flag. Oh, I didn't set that in code before, so let's see. Set size to, let's make this much smaller, something like 35. Okay, that's smaller than I had before, and I think this looks pretty good right now. All right, I'm going to save my work, and now that we have some bases going on, I'm going to add an enemy. So before I had this OYOBot sprite, might as well make him the enemy. I already have him in here. So I'm going to make OYOBot visible. And I'm going to separate this code here just for a second. I'm probably going to recycle some of it. So I'm just pulling down the forever blocks. And let's see. I'm going to put OYOBot right here. I'm going to grab a go to XY, stop my code. And I need to make sure I stop my code so that when I grab this go to XY block, it has the current values of where he is. So I can drag him off now, hit the green flag, he's always going to be there. So what we want to do is we're just going to make OYOBot move left and right, and when he touches Sonic, he gets hurt. So let's go ahead and do that. So move this down, grab a forever block, and I am forever going to move a little bit to the left, move a little bit to the right. So to do that, I can repeat these, one repeat loop after another, and I can go to motion, grab a change X by, change Y and change X by block again. One's going to be negative, one's going to be positive. If I click the green flag, it works. It's a little fast, so I'm going to make this a much smaller number, 3 and -3. I can make the repeat loops a little larger, 15, 15. And if I really want to slow it down, I can go to Control, grab a wait block, and put that inside each of these repeat loops. But I'm just going to use a really small number. 0.1, a little too slow, 0.01, maybe going to work pretty decent. And then lastly, I'm just going to move them to the right a little bit, so 170. Move them to the left, sorry. So right now, Sonic can walk around. OYObot's an enemy, he's chilling there. Maybe we put him up on one of these platforms instead. And let's add the feature where Sonic can't touch the enemy or else he gets hurt. So if you recall from last week, to do so, we added a health variable. So I'm going to go ahead, make sure I click on Sonic and not OYObot this time. Go to Variables, click on Make a Variable, and I'm going to call this Health, and I'm going to once again make this for this sprite only. I'll click OK. And what I want to do is I'm going to create another group of code blocks. So when green flag clicked, forever. What I want to say here is that OYObot has some health at the beginning. So set health to, we're going to do 3. And then if Sonic touches OYObot, he is going to lose life. So Control, if, and that's going to go inside the forever loop. We are touching sprite 1, which is the OYObot. Then we want to change health by -1. Now, if you recall from last week, this is going to give us a problem. Let's see. I'm going to zoom in here and pay attention in the upper left-hand corner here at Sonic's health. So he's going to touch the OYObot for just a second and watch what happens. Health instantly skyrockets downwards. So what we need to do is we need to say either let's put a timeout on, wait 1 second before Sonic can get hurt again, or we can say Sonic can't get hurt again unless he stops touching OYObot for some period of time. Then he can get hurt again. I'm going to go with the latter option. So under Control, I can wait until, I'm going to say wait until Sonic is not touching sprite 1. So in operators, I can grab a not block, put that right underneath the change block, and then I can duplicate my touching sprite 1 block, and now I should be able to move over to the right, touch the OYObot sprite, only be hurt once, but if I were to separate and touch again, he gets hurt. Now to wrap that up, let's go ahead and grab a another if block. And we're going to say if the health variable is less than less than 1 in this case is always going to be 0 or less, then we want to stop all. So in the control category, you can find the stop all block. And we are going to check this immediately after we change health by 1, right before the wait until block. So I'm walking around, lives are 2, walking around, lives are 1. Second I lose that last life, we're done. I'm going to click Save Now. And now we have some nice game mechanics, some good movement. We have a little bit of a level going on here. We have an enemy. What we're lacking is a purpose. What's the purpose of this game? What are we supposed to do? I could just sit over here and then I don't lose any health. The game doesn't end, but there's no task. There's nothing that's difficult. So in Sonic, we need to collect rings. That's not necessarily the point. You need to get to the end of the level, but to build this simple kind of game, we might as well start with that. So I'm going to create a ring variable. So in the bottom right hand corner here, there's the cat icon. Go ahead and hover on that. If you have a touchscreen, you might need to tap it first, but then you can go ahead and select paint. So here, I'm going to just draw a ring. So to do so, I'm going to click on the circle tool, but I don't want to fill color. So I click on the fill drop down, choose that white box with a line through it, with a red line through it, so that I have no fill. Then you can click the outline box, outline drop down. Go ahead and select a color. Try to do gold as best you can. I hope this is looking good. My monitor is a little bit skewed, so the colors are a little bit off. One last thing I'm going to do is I am going to bump up this thickness, and I'm going to play around with this most likely, but I'm going to start out with 20. So right now I'm going to click and draw, and actually I think this looks pretty good. It's a little big, but yeah, you know what? I'm going to drop this thickness down to 15 and try again. So let's try 10. So if we draw again, I'm going to draw a real small one, 10. I think 10 is going to be where I settle at. So I'm going to use the select tool, just get rid of all this, zoom in a little bit, not that much, zoom in a little bit, and I'm going to draw that ring. So to draw a perfectly symmetric ring, I'm going to hold shift, click. Oh no, let me try to do, there we go. So I undid what I too much, so I lost my color, so I hit Control Z to get it back. And now I'm going to draw my ring first and delete these other ones after. So to draw my ring, I'm going to hold shift, click, draw out, and let go. And I think that looks pretty good. Now I can use the select tool to get rid of these other rings that I drew, just by clicking and hitting delete. And then I can move the ring onto the center point. And that's extremely important anytime you work in Hatch. You want to make sure that what you draw is centered on the center of the sprite. So now that I have that, I can place my ring. I'll put it up here. We're just going to start out with 1. And let's see. You know what? I think we have enough time. I'm going to quickly add an animation to make this ring appear to be spinning. And this should be pretty easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make 3 different costumes to make it appear like it's spinning. The first is going to be this one, and then we're just going to modify it. So I'm going to right click up here in the upper left hand corner on the thumbnail, hit duplicate, and that gives me a duplicate of that first costume. Now all I want to do is, using the select tool, I'll click on the ring, and I'm just going to make this narrower. Just like that, and then I'm going to recenter it. And using the same process, I'm going to right click on that, duplicate, click on the ring, make it narrower again. I said 3 sprite costumes, I think. Let's make it 4. And duplicate one more time. And for this, I'm going to zoom in. Might need to change how I'm doing it. So I'm going to click. Get this narrow. I'm going to try this another way. So I'm now going to draw a line. And that line is going to be perfectly vertical. So to get it perfectly vertical, I'm going to hold the shift key. And I want to make this line the same size as the ring. And I can even zoom in here a lot. Modify this a little bit. Edit on 2. And then I can go back and delete the ring. So now, oh, and I do need to center it as well. Forgot to do that. There we go. So now if I click through, I kind of get the appearance that the ring is spinning. So I'm going to animate this real quick. It's going to be very simple. When green flag clicked, forever. And might need to change this. So normally you would just use a forever block, a wait block, and a next costume block, and then make this kind of quick. But the problem is that doesn't look that smooth, even if we speed it up, and that's because it needs to go up and then back down. So we're going to do this a little differently. I know that I have 4 costumes, so I'm going to do this pretty simply. Repeat 3 times next costume, then I'm going to go repeat 3 times previous costume. I can't do that. That's right. So you can do previous backdrop, you can't do previous costume, so I got to do this a little bit differently. I'm going to use the switch costume block, and you can actually put numbers in here. So I am going to create a variable. So under variables, make a variable. For the sprite only, I'm going to say costume, and then I'm going to put in a pound sign or a hashtag to represent number. So I'm going to set my costume number to 1, because if we look at the costumes, that's how it starts counting, at 1, not 0. Set costume number to 1, and then I'm going to switch costume number to, and I'm going to pull from the variables, costume number. And all I need to do is then change costume number by 1, and I can put that in here. And if I duplicate, I just need to change this by -1. So switch costume to costume number, and then change costume number by 1. And we'll put in a small wait block in here under each change costume. So something like 0.05, I think, maybe 0.05. And what this is going to do, it's going to go from costume 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's see. So this is not quite right. Let's slow this down a little bit. So I'm just changing the wait block so I can debug why this isn't quite working. Oh, I think it was working. It was just the costume number had gotten kind of high, so it didn't initially set. So let's try this again. Let's make this 0.1, the wait block 0.1. And that looks pretty good. You can play around with the wait times, but I think this is looking pretty good. And now Sonic has a goal, and we're just going to take 1 quick minute to program the goal into here, and that goal is going to be that's if Sonic gets the ring, he adds a point and the ring disappears. So we can do this, we can program this kind of along with the health. I think that works pretty well. So I'm going to add an if block right to the very bottom. I'm going to borrow this block right here. And I don't want to say touching sprite 1, I'm going to say touching sprite 2, which is the ring. If touching sprite 2, now we need to make a points variable. So points. I'll leave this for all sprites. I'm going to click OK. Change my points, or change points by 1. And because I'm changing points, I should also set points to 0 when the green flag is clicked. And then I'm also going to broadcast a message. And I'm doing it, and what this message is going to do is going to tell the ring to disappear or hide. And the reason I'm doing this as opposed to programming it in the ring is sometimes if you do it that way, the ring will sense that it touches Sonic first, disappear, and then Sonic won't know that it touched the ring and you won't increment your points. So I'm doing it in this way specifically. So I'm going to go to the bottom of the events block. I'm going to broadcast message. Got coin. And then inside the coin, I want to receive that message. And all I'm going to do is hide. Now, because I hide, I want to make sure I add a show block right underneath the one green flag clicked. And now if I click the green flag, I can jump up, jump onto this platform, and if let's zoom in, my points are 0, the coin is there, or the ring, and now it's not, and I got my points. Have I been calling this coin? Okay, so if you followed me and said coin, you should make a new message and say ring. Coins is from other games. Coins are from other games. So that's pretty much the game. Things you can change to make this a little bit better. We have OYOBot right here. We can put OYOBot on this platform instead. And so his Y position is 39. And his X position somewhere in around 30. Now OYOBot's there. It's going to be much more difficult to get to the ring. But this is kind of the starting point of a platformer. In the future, if you wanted to do something like add more rings, I would actually advise that you program this in reverse. So the ring, each ring looks for if it touches Sonic. And if it does, then it broadcasts, then it disappears. And right before it disappears, it increments points. That's why I made points a variable that is not for the sprite only. You can see here in variables, I do see points regardless of what sprite I'm in. You should also just be able to use clones and position those clones so you don't have to have like 50 different ring. You don't have to have 50 different ring sprites. You can just have one and make clones of it. So that's all the time I think we have for today. In the future, hopefully I can get that walking animation so we can start making a real nice looking game. And maybe we add some textures, make this looking professional, and then we can either add levels, make it start scrolling, make different game objectives, make various different game objectives. That's a style I've been seeing a lot in the game jams. Who knows? So that's all we have for today. Stick around. We have several sessions coming up next. Up next is a lesson, it's part 2, I believe, of the Lua visualizer. Stick around.